Welcome back to the show. I'm here with Dan Andrews, co-host of the world-famous Tropical MBA podcast and co-founder of several businesses. He's a long-term entrepreneur, and he does it in a special flavor because he's location independent, coming to us today from, I believe, Barcelona in Spain.
Where, yes, Michael, thanks for having me.
Yes. So coming up, we're going to be looking at what exactly is intuition and how can you use it in your business, or even is it useful in business? This is a question we want to consider. And how originally did we get attracted to intuition, even if it's sometimes the pet that wants to bite us, it seems like. And we'll look at is muscle memory intuition and some sports analogies that help with business and intuition. And what are some of the things that many people believe intuitively but are actually false? And we'll also have a look at whether intuition helps or hinders in hiring. And controversially, we'll look at dating and business. Are they really the same thing? So
you're going to have to stick around you're going to have to stick around at the end of the show to hear our salacious thoughts on dating. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I appreciate you coming on the show. And we were asking before we hit the record button, what exactly is this intuition thing?
Yeah.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah. Let me ask a few questions of you, because that's maybe just give me a little bit of background on how you discovered this concept and what attracted you to it. That's the first thought that occurs to me, because I don't think I've had the same sort of attraction to it. And I'm curious about that.
Well, I think for me, I had a small car accident in 2001, had a little whiplash, got some therapy. The health insurance on the physiotherapy ran out. And then I started doing yoga because one of the therapists said, hey, you can't come to me, but you could look after yourself a bit better. And then that, I think, started me opening up to hearing my intuition more. And around that time, I started going to a bunch of personal growth workshops that I paid for, as opposed to trying to find free stuff. So there was a whole acceleration in my life there. And also, I was very keen to have my business make more money. I nearly said have my money make more business, which would be the wrong way around.
Which would be pretty amazing if you can figure that out, by the way.
Yes. Well, often I think when I said that phrase, I was thinking I get the same amount of money, but I have to do twice the amount of work to get it, which
right.
In early years of my business, that sometimes seemed to be the way, if not entirely going backwards. So I was interested, how can I improve my business? And that was a lot of the motivation there. And this was just one of the tools for doing that. I mean, I was interested in all kinds of ways. I read lots of books on business and sales and marketing and hiring, and went to workshops on how do you read people, and how can you predict the future, or various other things. So those are some of the ways I got into it. And I sort of think there was a kind of graph of intuition. It kind of went up and up. So in the early days, I didn't hear it so well, and I would go to other people. Like for hiring, one of the things I've done is use handwriting analysis. I'd go to a graphologist and have them, as well as me, interviewing the people and reading their resume and giving them tests and doing all the rational mind stuff, and having the team interview people as well, so they got other viewpoints. I'd also get this handwriting analysis done, and they'd give me, other things on the person. But then around 2009, I did yoga teacher training, and that did all kinds of things, because it wasn't just learning how to teach yoga. You go through like every possible pretzel and position, and I think a lot of stuff gets stuck in our bodies, or it certainly did for me. And going through these different meditations and postures released a lot of stuff. And around there, I got this strong intuition to move from Maryland and go to the Andes, except I didn't know anyone in the Andes. So I just asked a lot of friends, and eventually found someone in Bolivia who said, yeah, come visit me in La Paz and I'll help you get an apartment. And I was terrified to get on the plane, because my rational mind was like, what are we going to do there? Is it safe? I mean, isn't Bolivia dangerous? Isn't that where Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid got shot? I mean, but as soon as the plane landed, I was happy with it. So I trusted my intuition enough to overcome the fear.
I jumped ahead because I knew that you were happy with the decision. I'm curious, like, do you now have a narrative about what the world or yourself was trying to say to you? Or was it just merely some good sense was occurring to me that I needed to make a change? Or is this part of a bigger kind of thing going on?
I think it was that particular, both of those things, I think, were my higher self giving me that message. I think I did have that car accident so I could have that experience of getting into the yoga. It kind of tipped me into taking it more seriously. And same thing with having that intuition to go to the Andes and actually acting on it. Because, I think everyone gets intuitive messages, but the difference is, do we hear them? Do we act on them?
Yeah.
So, and the more I act on the intuitive messages, the stronger I hear them. Well, that's my experience. It's like reading marketing stuff in books. You could read 1,000 books on marketing, but if you don't actually change how you do your marketing, it doesn't really change your business.
How often do you end up being disappointed by your intuition?
Well, I don't know. I really get disappointed by it. I mean, maybe a related question is, how accurate is it?
Yeah.
Because I think the sub question there is, does the intuition produce the results I want? And then I go more into curiosity. If my intuition said hire this person and then they don't work out, I'm kind of curious, well, what happened there? Did I misread the intuitive info? Was there something else there? Did the situation shift?
You could also have this goal, like, I really want to grow my business.
Mm-hmm.
And then your intuition doesn't give a shit about that goal. And so it's telling you to move to the Andes or to help people in your neighborhood, or it could be telling you a number of things that you're not listening to. And then, in other words, you could be trying to shoehorn yourself into a type of person that maybe you're not, and trying to employ it to dark means, so to speak.
Employ
have you ever
your
seen
intuition
that?
to dark means?
Right, because it's possible that maybe the only reason you want to double your business is so that you can look good at a family reunion, for example, or that you can show off to your peers, or that you can feel a sense of validation. And I'm wondering if, in your experience, I know you've had so many guests on the show, is the intuition, is it the thing that is it part of the problem in that respect? If you need, if you're doing things for the wrong reasons or for really harmful reasons, or could it point you in a healthier direction?
Well, I think intuition is just a tool. We have, in our life and business, we have many things available. We have our rational minds, we have our intuition, we have our emotions, we have books or courses we can access. And it's just like screwdrivers and saws and spanners and all the other stuff you might have in a toolbox. And
how do you know what a spanner is? Are you a former carpenter?
Yes, my name is Michael, and I used to be a carpenter.
I'll believe it.
Yeah, but I try not to be too attached to I must use my intuition. It's just a tool to give me extra info when making business or life decisions. The rational mind is another tool. So, and if you want to use your saw to make a bright and shiny object to make your family reunion happy, there's nothing wrong with that,
Right. That makes sense.
Or if you want to do it to change the world and end world hunger, that's cool too,
Right.
Why do we have to judge that? It's all good stuff. I mean, you're getting to practice soaring. You're getting to practice using your rational mind or your intuition or whatever other tools you happen to have in your toolbox.
Well,
I mean, what's the meaning of, what's the reason we incarnated? You know, why did you incarnate, Dan?
well, I guess I was thinking about it because like the intuition could potentially be particularly useful in like getting us out of a bad situation. So that bad situation might be one that you think is good. So in the case, I was just thinking about that where you're mentioning going to the Andes or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like you might think that it's really great to have a big, powerful business, or you might think it's great to like live in a certain place, but then your intuition could be challenging that subtly for you. And if you listen to it, it could be that where it could have a tremendous impact on your life, where you trust that voice and you say, actually, all the things that I've like stated for myself aren't, maybe there's a point of resistance against that, because if you've built this like rational web of like why it's good to be, you know, so-and-so or this type of person. And then, in other words, that's where it could be tremendously powerful, and not just another tool, but it could be particularly interesting or particularly useful.
Right, because it might be the tool in your toolbox that's the flashlight, right?
Yeah,
You
exactly.
you might be bumbling around in the dark saying, yeah, make my business bigger. Yeah, you know, have a better logo. Yeah, let's get a bigger office because that looks impressive.
Exactly.
You know, let's buy the latest model car. And then you find this flashlight that's been beeping at you from your toolbox, and it says, hey, maybe you need to be doing something slightly different with your business.
Well, that's
maybe
where
focus on this.
One of the things that I've heard, and the problem is it can cut both ways, but I've heard a lot of entrepreneurs speak like that when they're talking about identifying new opportunities. Like their intuition told them 5 years ago that this was what they were made for, that this was going to be great. But instead what they did was they read a blog that had a course and they signed up for it, or they thought like, well, Dan Andrews says podcasting is the greatest, so I started a podcast instead of doing that thing that you know, and I get blamed for that all the time. That's why I mentioned that example, because people come up to me and they're like, F you, Dan Andrews. But that's interesting because I remember times like that in my career where I just felt like something was really valuable. And had I waited for the world to agree in terms of money, checks and balances, spreadsheets, the marketplace, the news media, my friends and family, then I would have missed an opportunity.
Right. I think that's a great insight. And the problem is that so many entrepreneurs, business people are so busy and so afraid to have silence in their life to hear those messages or to act on them, that they just keep on going down the same treadmill, you know, and they may be a little stuck on it.
What's your lifestyle like, Michael? I'm sorry, but I'm just curious because I'm seeing the background, but your head's in the way of all these books, and there's a Yoda on the wall.
I'll move there's some books.
It's like a bric-a-brac of fascinating items. Do you keep a busy?
I'll just bring Mr. Yoda. I don't know if you can read that.
Do not try. Do or do not. There is no try.
Yeah,
classic words of wisdom from a small being.
Yeah, very successful entrepreneur and Jedi Knight. Whoops, I may have to put that back later. Oh, well. I'm kind of constrained by my headset. I'll put Mr. Yoda back, but that's an important. I mean, I have that on the wall to remind me not to try to do things. You know, either do it or don't do it. But I don't language, I'm going to try to learn yoga, or I'm going to try to do this new marketing video, or I'm going to try to create a new book or a blog or whatever. I'm either going to do it and actually have it happen, or I'm not going to do it. And that's not just for me. That's something I used to have that when I had an office. I now have a virtual company, to answer your question about lifestyle. So I move around the world. I spend about half my time in Peru, and then spread the rest between the US, Europe, and Southeast Asia. And I've got two businesses: a computer software business and intuition training business. So
why do you do the intuition training? Because you don't need to. Your
I don't
software.
need to.
So what was the spark?
My intuition said I need to be doing this, and it wasn't entirely clear how to make it a business. And right now, financially, it's being supported by the other business. But I do get a lot of joy out of doing it. I guess you call it a passion project. But
Yep.
I think it has the opportunity to be financially successful, because I think there's a whole wave of change happening in the world, and just people are, how I would put it is, they're increasing their vibration. They're becoming more positive and more conscious overall, and that includes entrepreneurs. And part of this in the entrepreneurial and business world is being open to using our intuition and doing it in an open way. It's not just that you go into a little dark closet and then check in on your gut on a decision. You can openly share in a meeting with your staff that, I've got a gut feeling that this marketing plan is not the way to go, and we need to relook at it. Or this candidate for this position, my intuition says, yes, this person will work out and bring us profit and joy over the next year.
It's interesting because I've been in that situation, and it's an interesting rhetorical move actually to make in a room full of people, because the common way we communicate with each other is through the dialectic. So particularly in a meeting. So it's like, if there's 6 people there, what you're trying to do is, like, you have a feeling about the way the business should go. And the social contract kind of suggests that you need to basically make the case. Mm-hmm. And so if you show up and you're kind of like the senior person, you're the owner, and you say, I have a gut feeling here. It's a card that either you need to reset the way you talk, most companies talk, or you need to use it sparingly, because it's also sort of tyrannical in a way where you would say, I have a gut feeling. I need you all to trust this because I can't explain it to you, but I'm very experienced. I trust my gut, and I need, basically the implication is that now you all have to follow that. Right? Because we're not having a dialectic anymore.
What about if you invited everyone else to share what their intuition was?
Well, let's just use
does it have to be the dictator of intuition in the room?
Here's why.
Not be a co-creation?
Well, let's just use the hypothetical, which is quite common in that sense, which is like I mentioned in the value example. You generally wouldn't need to resort to that unless you were the only one who had that intuition. So that's a useful hypothetical, as it happens all the time in business, is that wait, these people, you can make any judgment you want. Let's just say the hypothetical is you're the only person who has that intuition, which will often be the case if you're the owner of your business. So now there's a whole bunch of literature about this. People say things like, well, you need to let your employees make their own mistakes and develop their own intuition. So this could run, this is an interesting, like you said, as business people, we're so far away from this that if you bring it to the table in your business, it could be a big challenge in that particular hypothetical. Yeah.
It definitely could be a challenge. It's a moment of vulnerability. I was talking to Tim Cullenly on this show the other day, and I asked him what it would take for all entrepreneurs to openly use their intuition. And his answer on that is they'd have to be okay being vulnerable.
I disagree with that. So in the hypothetical that I just set up, and look, I'm using a limited hypothetical, but that's not a vulnerable move. That's a dictatorial move. I can say look, everybody share their intuition here, but my intuition is different from yours. And that's what we're going to do because I think it's the right thing to do. So there's nothing vulnerable about that in my mind. So I only mention it because I can, and it might not be a good hypothetical, but because I can relate to it very much. Like I've been in a lot of meetings, and maybe this isn't my intuition or it could be my experience or whatever, where I feel I see something. I feel like there's something to be done, but that to get everybody on the same page is I think a situation that a lot of entrepreneurs find themselves in.
So, I mean, if I was in that situation, first of all, I'd ask, is this thing I have coming from my intuition, or is it my emotions, or is it my rational mind, or is it some pattern, some belief system that is running through me from previous experiences? Like, often, for example, in hiring, people have what's called scarring in their hiring. In other words, they made a bad hire in the past with a certain kind of person, and now they're gun shy about hiring the same kind of thing. But that new person may be just fine. It's just that you've got a previous emotional scar around dealing with that kind of individual. So the question that's on the table is to get conscious, where is this knowledge in me coming from? And being in a meeting with a bunch of other people is probably not the best situation to get clear on where that info is coming from in the first place and what the intuition is. I mean, one of the ways I think of intuition, it's sort of like I'm driving in my car and the intuition is a little boy or girl in the back seat whispering things to me about, hey, Michael, turn left at the next intersection. You'll avoid the traffic. It's a good idea. And meanwhile, I've got the GPS rational mind, blaring away. And I've got the loud brothers of ego and follow the crowd yapping away. Plus, I have the radio turned up full crank on some rock channel, right? And I'm not really hearing that little intuitive voice.
Right.
So first of all, a business meeting where there's a bunch of other people and everyone's discussing things, it's really hard to hear intuition.
So then sorry, I mean, this is just how my brain works. When you gave that example, I thought, so let's say you can hear the intuition and say you've practiced that, which is a whole nother conversation on how to do that. Is it always right?
It depends what question you've asked it, Dan. I think it is always right. Like, here's the thing, and let's jump right to the end of the episode and reveal the dating thing, just to, shake things up a bit. You've probably seen friends who ask themselves, is this person going to be a good person to date, right? Is this going to be a good boyfriend or girlfriend? And then they proceed to date them, and it turns out into a clusterfuck disaster dating situation, right?
Sure.
But if they look back after it's ended and they say, was this good for me? Maybe they suddenly become aware of some family dynamic that they cleaned up, or they just stop being a doormat to people, or whatever the thing is. And you could say from a certain point of view, yeah, that was the perfect person for you to date at that point in your life because you had this growth spurt afterwards.
Right.
And the same thing in business. Is this a good person to hire? Well, maybe they were a disaster zone, right? But then you realized, hey, I really need to change my hiring process, and our onboarding of staff needs to be different. And there are just some people I'm just going to say no to,
right.
This personality type is not a fit, and I'm now 200% clearer on our company culture. And I'm not going to take crap time after time. If someone does a major screw up, they're out the door. And if they do a minor screw up, I'm going to have this process in place that deals with it.
Right.
So were they a good person? Were they good? Is this person good to hire? Absolutely. But did this person bring me joy and profit? No.
Right.
So that's the example of a better question. Will this candidate bring me profit and joy in the next 12 months? Would be a question that my intuition could clearly answer.
Right.
Will this person to date bring me joy and happiness? Oh, apparently not.
Right. But the question that it doesn't answer well is, should I date them in the first place?
Well, it depends what your goal is. Is your goal to have the most growth? In personal growth and spiritual growth? Is your goal to have happiness and joy and a wonderful home life. If
Right.
you're hiring someone, is your goal that they fit in well with the team and they contribute to the profit and joy? You know, what's the goal? You know, and I think in business, and that comes back to the question you asked earlier. You know, are you here to make something to make your family think you're doing clever things, or your school friends to think that, or are you here for personal growth? Are you here to change the world? Or are you here to make $1 billion? Or, you know, what is the goal of your business? And I think underneath every entrepreneur, the goal is personal growth. Why really do we do business? It's to grow in a certain way, or certainly that seems to be the motivation.
That's interesting. It's definitely like there's a high correlation between that desire, and it's like it's almost when people decide to start their first business, the first thing they do is go out and buy a bunch of personal growth books. And it's kind of a strange thing because it's like, well, you're going to grow a business, you're not going to grow yourself, but there's such a huge identity overlap, it seems, between your business uh, and yourself. Yeah.
So I think the better question you ask, the better answer you're likely to get from your intuition. And not being conscious of the question you're asking is a recipe for getting poorer quality answers.
That makes sense. And that's a different understanding that I had coming into the conversation, because I made the assumption that you wouldn't need, like, the intuition would be the thing that you don't provoke or you don't ask questions of, right? Like I kind of thought that your intuition was this thing that was what's already in you somehow. But of course I have a bunch of assumptions about it. I don't know that much about it. But you're saying that you actively go in there and say, what is the quiet voice think about this issue, or what could be revealed to me?
What first of all, you know, as you alluded to earlier, I create situations each day so I can hear the quiet voice, and then I do things to amp up the volume on the quiet voice. You know,
can we talk about those things?
Well, sure. I'm sure you do them yourself. You know, things like meditating or going for a walk, or taking a shower, you know, and being able to, you know, so many people get great business ideas in the shower, or when they wake up. You know, why is that? Because they finally got quiet instead of having the TV on or the radio or listening to 17 podcasts simultaneously, or, you know, being busy.
For me, it's walking. Somehow when I walk, my brain is more productive than when I sit. So I pace a lot around the house when I'm trying to write something or come up with an idea.
Yeah, and I have a business friend. She typically, when we have phone calls, she paces around her office to get better ideas. You know,
what kinds of things do you teach your students, or do you facilitate them, or what sorts of things happen in those interactions? I'm curious about how you coach people.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly will give suggestions, but I'll also use the what would it take question to have them, because that's a way to access your intuition. Ask yourself, what would it take to get this goal? What would it take to hire an ideal candidate? What would it take to increase my profits 10% this week? Or whatever the question is. So anytime you've got a business problem, you know, I suggest they use the what would it take. And then I use other tools to amplify that, and look at the energy of the situation, because often there's like there's the physical reality of your business, but also usually there's some kind of energy in there that needs to shift to get to where you want to go. Right. And then there may be, you know, family patterns or, you know, childhood trauma that you have that's getting in the way of getting to the goal that you say you want to get to. You know,
right.
Often if something's not happening easy in my business, I know there's something in me that's creating that at some level.
I'm curious about coaching because I've tried it a few times, and I think that I'm pretty horrible at it for whatever reason. I don't know.
Horrible at giving it or horrible at receiving it?
Probably both. I'm not sure about it. I've thought more on the, because people come to me for coaching occasionally, and sometimes I'll go on a phone call or whatever. And it's hard. It's hard to get people to change, I guess. It's hard, and it takes a really long time for me. So I guess I always get frustrated with that. Like, gosh, this is hard. It's taking forever. So, and it also seems like you mentioned, like if it's a pattern that you're in or childhood trauma, well, that does seem to be the case in a lot of situations in business. Like we were talking about the overlap of your identity and your business. It can be the overlap of your practices and the results. And so I've been encountered with that many, many times. And that's part of the reason that like the different, that I don't know if you remember that slide at DCBKK. There's an event that we were at many years ago. And it was like, if you're less than $100,000 in revenue, you're still like in the psychological problems realm. And then if you get greater than that, you're in like a marketing problems realm. And if you're greater than that, you're in like a human resources realm. And that's one of the things that kind of always struck with me about trying to facilitate change in entrepreneurs and businesses is that, yeah, it strikes me why intuition is a powerful way to speak to people in that way, because a lot of it is us that's holding these things back.
I think all of it is us holding these things back, because either it's us directly, or in the past we hired people into our business that weren't a fit for where we wanted to go now, or we didn't structure things to support the kind of business we want. I mean, I was at the DC Austin event where Laura Roda gave her talk on how she paints a clear picture for her staff. And she deliberately, consciously created that business, which is the third business she's created, I believe. And the first two businesses kind of sucked because she either had to spend all her time making the money, or every time she took her hand off the controls of the business, it stopped growing. Right. And she said, wait a minute, this third business, I want it to be able to be successful and grow, even if I'm not in the office making it grow or doing stuff.
Right.
And that was a total change of mindset. And her business, I forget exactly how much of it. Didn't she go from $0 to $1 million recurring revenue within a year in that third business?
I think she's doing much better than that at this point. Yeah.
Well, she's now in her second or third year of the business, so I
right.
think she is doing much better. But she went from $0 to $1 million, and she took 3 months off for pregnancy leave in the middle of that. And that's impressive. Right? There's this whole myth in entrepreneurship that you're supposed to hustle and work really hard, and that's the only way to make a business succeed.
Right.
And I think she and some other people I've met through the DC are examples of that doesn't have to be the case.
That's interesting, because if I were asked, yeah, that's interesting. It seems to me like my core beliefs is that the hard work element is pretty highly correlated with successful businesses. And that's part of that stacking. Like, I don't think she could have done that in the first year.